Hey everyone. So yeah, I just wanted to first of all, a couple people had talked about this and I thought they liked the idea. So I'm gonna bring it to you guys. I'm sorry, I'm adjusting my new thing here. All right. So one of the things I had done, so there's a chat room, and if you ever want to go in the chat room on this, what you do is you have to be on there when it's live, of course, because we can't time travel. But if you're watching this later, it doesn't matter. But if you're watching this live, which many of you do, what you do is you go to get to the chat room, go to the YouTube page for this. You can do that by clicking on in my blog, actually clicking on the thing itself where it says YouTube on the actual feed you're watching. And then you'll see on the right hand side, if you have a Google account, which almost everybody has a Gmail account of some kind, you'll see a thing that pops up that says chat. And then you can pop that chat out or you can watch it right there and just chat there. We have a lot of good people there. We take they help us out a lot too, because many minds are better than 3 or 4, as we like to say. And you can get in there. So something I want to do for the chat room specifically, and I wanted to find something cool to do for them. And I think what I'm going to do is, as you guys see behind me, I have all these jerseys. This represents about like 1/3 of my jerseys, which I've been getting since I was, knee high to a gopher every Christmas, right? So I have maybe twice as many as these or 3 times as many as these. So I'm going to change one out every day. All right, and put one in. So the idea is in the chat room, whoever can be the first in the chat room to figure out which jersey's new back there. Now I want to give you a little warning because I did do this. My camera's a little bit wider right now, so right about Gritty, from Gritty on over, we're talking about today. Okay, so don't worry about these because you didn't see those in the last podcast I was in. So from Gritty's head on over this way, all the way up back through here, all these and these. That's where you can actually, if you can find the one that's new that wasn't there last time I was up, and I'll give you a point. And what we'll do at the end of each week, we'll have some kind of prize for you guys.
It's the Atlanta Flames jersey.
It's not.
So I do have one thing to mention pre-show because I think it's pretty funny.
Go ahead, Russ.
I caught wind of this the other day, Ak. You'll get a kick out of it. So I saw that Lou Graham is back doing some shows with Foreigner or doing Foreigner songs. I know he did some shows with Foreigner. Now he's touring. And he's touring with John Payne, and they're doing Foreigner and Asia hits.
Really?
Ooh.
And this is like, why don't you just ask me to be a vocalist for X band? Like, I don't understand the mix. Lou Graham, I used to love him back in the day. Fortunately, his voice is not fantastic now.
It's gravel. It's terrible.
It's gravelly. I mean, yes, they were probably overproduced in the studio, so it's hard for him to live up to it. But him doing Asia, like, I don't even know what to say. Like John Payne, what was he in Asia for an album?
Yeah, he really wasn't. I mean, I was trying to think.
He wasn't really a member of Asia, but he was on it for a few albums probably.
He was as much a member of Asia as Ray Wilson was a member of Genesis.
Right. And so, like, this is one where I can't pay money for it. It's like 8th degrees of something. You know what I mean? It's like,
if it was like the what we used to have the free concert in the square in Buffalo during the summers. If it was one of those shows and it was free and you could walk in and just listen to it for 5 minutes.
So I'm going to tell you about one of those. They had one of those shows at Cooper River Park, and Eck knows where that is.
Oh, yeah.
Jersey. And it was Pat Benatar, but this is probably like 7 years ago. So we go, we're there, we're listening. She sounds really bad. Yeah. A guy walks up 3 songs into it and goes, "When's Pat Benatar going on?" I'm like, "You're listening to her." and I felt bad because the band sounded great, right? Neil Girardi was still great. Now, 3 years ago, I saw Pat Benatar with like Rick Springfield. I was covering that show in Atlantic City. I want to say covering because I didn't pay for it. But it was a pretty good show. And Pat Benatar got her voice back. So I kind of wonder if she had maybe gotten an operation, or a cold or something. But that day it was bad. But she could still rock. But it was funny because the guy had no idea he was listening to Pat Benatar.
That's a shame. I mean, Pat Benatar is such a legend too.
Oh yeah.
One note, and then we can start. Apparently a person who does the Chiron on KDKA television in Pittsburgh has either been suspended or fired, and the reason being is he put on the bottom of on the bottom of the screen when Tom Brady was doing his interview at the Super Bowl.
We're losing Mike. Mike breaking up
on the punchline.
Breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you went away for us though.
Tom Brady, known cheater, and it's like, okay, you know what? you may hate him. Great. Don't bring that to your job, because if you did and you got fired, you deserve it. It's stupid. It's just stupid.
Although he did get suspended for it. Like, it's not something that he made up.
I know, but it has no point. It has no place.
I don't know. I mean, you could argue that.
I would think it does. I mean, given all the talk the Rams have been doing already this week, harkening back to the first Super Bowl they were together, I would think it has a pretty good place.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a fireable offense.
They're still all over it, the Rams. They haven't given up on this thing at all. Listen to the comments from Warner and Falk and everybody else.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's a fireable offense. I'll be honest.
Yeah. I don't know either. It's a good question.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on. We did get Wolverine 99999 got the jersey that changed in the chat room, which is so if you look at me for a second, it's this Habs jersey which I put there. And he was funny. He got it because there's another Habs jersey here, and I really didn't even realize that. So that's my mistake, but that's good. That was pretty good. So anyway, I had a Team Canada white Team Canada jersey there before.
So what you're saying is that you have an extra can of Febreze to relieve the stink in the room.
What I'm saying is I once played for a team that wore Canadians jerseys in a men's league, and that's this one up here actually has my name and number on the back of it, and this one is Guy Carbonose, I believe. So
real good player.
All right, there you have it. Okay, so let's move on. And it is tough to Thomas brought up in the chat room too that he took vocal lessons for 2.5 years. When you have a cold or flu, it's tough to sing. I toured for many years and was always amazed by our lead singer, who really just could fight through anything. But it is harder to sing with a flu and a cold. There is stuff you can do to get through it. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
There is a point you can't fight through. Like John Anderson literally lost his job, and yes, because he was getting older, had bronchitis or pneumonia. And then when he got healthy, they wouldn't let him back in the band. But if you hear him now, he's unbelievable. But at that time, he couldn't do anything. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Our singer used to have one of those you can either get like a tea
atomizer.
Yeah, the thing you put on your face.
Yeah.
You just have to get through it. Of course, and then there's like the greatest drug in the world is Sudafed or Dayquil for that kind of stuff.
But the real Sudafed, not the over the counter, the back behind.
Right. The good old
the Sudafed that Nicholas Backstrom got banned from the Olympics for.
Right. There you go. All right, so let's move on. Oh, the other question is what's this jersey right here next to the Carter Hart jersey? That is, someone had to get that right in the chat room too. That is hard to tell what it is, but that is the Nashville Knights of the ECHL jersey.
I wouldn't have gotten it, but it is hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean that also is very similar to another. There was another Knights in the AHL. That was it. The Atlanta Knights, I want to say. I think it was the Atlanta Knights back then, before the Thrashers. That was the Tampa's farm system. Had these two Knights teams in them, one in the AHL, one in the ECHL, when Tampa first came in. And this one is from the ECHL. And I was in Nashville recording an album. This is before the Predators. And so when we were hockey people, and they knew we were hockey people, so they're like, oh, we actually have a hockey team here. And I went to see the final game of the Nashville Predators in the history, because they're taking the thing down. Little did I know that shortly after that, they would be announced that they were actually going to bring an NHL team there. But they were ending the team. So and in that game, I got to see Ryan Sittler play for that.
That's very exciting.
I know. Against
Flyers fans are very excited to hear that too.
Yeah.
But the funny thing at the end
of championships upper deck cards I had there, Russ.
A symbol of a wasted first round pick. Thank you very much.
Yes, they have the off their backs thing, and so they had that kind of thing at the end of the game. And they basically gave out raffle tickets. You could buy them. It was for charity. So I bought 10 raffle tickets, and I actually won this jersey.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how much money did they give you to take that jersey?
It was fun. I mean, it was. I mean, I love it because
it's still a real jersey.
It's a funk team. It's a real jersey. It's number 19.
Even if it said on Jello, I would wear it. I guess.
And there were two players on that team and I just this makes me crazy. Someone might know this out there. If you know,
that's a collector's item, Russ.
Yeah. If anybody out there knows this is really a good one.
By the way, I would never get a jersey with the name of Jello on it, because I never played in the league, so I have no business having my name on a jersey.
There you go. Well, on the Predators, okay, on that team, on the Nashville Knights, there were two players that were named exactly the same thing, and it was a French name. It was like Pierre-Andre Bellevue or whatever, and I can't remember what it was. One of them was the leading scorer in the ECHL, was just tearing it up, and the other was like on the third line, but they were exactly the same 3 names, right? So I don't know what those names were, but someone out there does. If you're from Nashville, you would
all right,
know.
so I'll give one more quick thing. One year I was in Quebec and we went through and we were covering games, and I went to the Fighting League, and I'm in the locker room and there was a former Flyer there, and it was like Guillaume Lefay, somebody like that. He played like a short time, and I recognized him. He's like, "You recognized me?" I'm like, "Yeah, I looked on the roster. I saw it was you. I had to go say hello."
Yep. That's really funny. Oh yeah, no.
He was just on that team so he could go through medical school. So it was just extra money for him.
That's happened to me a couple times where you recognize somebody like that that's so obscure that they're so unbelievably thrilled to know that a reporter might actually recognize them in any way, shape, or form. That I've gotten a couple jerseys that way. Like they've just said, "No,
I didn't get a jersey.
I got to give you this." I'm like, and normally, I mean, it's not really proper for us to take jerseys. I don't take jerseys from players who are still playing anymore.
What do you mean steal them when you're in the locker room?
No. Just, it's just conflict of interest. You don't want to be like, you don't want to befriend somebody. But after players leave, I've gotten some jerseys like that. This one up here, the Eric Lindros jersey. That's a Maple Leafs Lindros jersey up there. That was after Eric retired.
That's a classic.
I got that from him. And then
almost as good as the Stars Lindros.
Yeah. The Dallas Stars. That's even crazier. All right, so let's move on. Let's get going with the show. Here we go. Okay, hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, January 30th. No, it's not. Is it Tuesday?
It's Wednesday.
Damn it.
You were really close on all fronts, but then you really weren't close.
You got the decade
I
right.
haven't gotten one wrong in a long time.
Right.
I haven't gotten one wrong in a long time.
You got the word day at the end of the day.
Oh, that's true. He was on a good streak.
I was on a streak there. That's my longest streak by far since we started.
So fix that sign that says no errors in X number of days. Take
Yeah,
it.
I'll make one of those for the back. All right, here we go. Ready?
Yes.
That's great. I love that idea, Jim. No days since missed trade rumor. How about that? Put that back there.
There you go.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, January 30th, 2019 AD.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. Let's get right to it today because I'm going to have to leave at 1:45 to make some phone calls. And the reason is that I've been chasing this Islanders thing today, and I've talked a lot about the Islanders. I've been blogging about the Islanders, so I've made a couple more sources with the Islanders in the last. One of the things I've found that's kind of fun is when you actually are a beat writer, you can make some friends. Which as just a hockey rumor guy, it's a lot harder.
I wouldn't know what that's like.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, you've done that. So this
I said making friends. That's
making friends. Yeah, no, you do. I've seen you out with all the gang. All right, so so I've made some sources now, and now remember this is a Lou Lamoriello team. So Lou Lamoriello hates any rumors, and there was a time at which he would actually claim, and I think this was just a claim, that he would claim that he would not do a trade if the rumor came out about it.
I used to hear that too.
And that was very common. But I really felt like, is that honestly something that he's going to do? If the trade's something he likes, is he going to not do it because the rumor came out about it?
I don't know.
I can tell you in the time that he was with the Leafs that there was never a time that a trade that he made leaked beforehand, like the Phaneuf deal or anything. You never heard any inkling of the deal that he was going to make.
There was one. I do remember one. And it was right when you first got there, and it felt like it was like it may not have. I can't remember what it was, but I do remember and in Toronto, that's an unbelievable.
It wasn't a trade. It might have been a signing, but it wasn't a trade. I mean, I remember like the Matt Martin thing when they
something
signed.
like came out like that Drager had or somebody had, and it's hard. I mean, you're talking about Toronto, which is like every rumor person lives there. Everybody knows what's going on, So that's a real tough city, and they were probably thrilled when Lou left. To be honest, because it makes life a lot easier for them. But Lou used to tell this to other GMs, and that's where you would hear it mostly. Like if you were talking to somebody else, and they would say, "This is what's going on." But Lou told me that if this got out there, so that's how you'd hear this, and it was kind of so I would be stuck quite often without being able to talk about things like that. So I don't think that, but I at the end, the more I've been involved in this, more.
So now, if you bring up something and the Islanders don't do it, the fans are going to hate.
Right?
Yeah, bring it up. Here. Bring it up. Just
so here I go.
So we can piss them off.
Bring it on, Eck.
Dan Petro will come back and get pissed at us.
By saying what I did today, I have not yet broken the bounds. Okay, so what I said in the room on the blog today is that they are trying to do something very big, and they are close to doing something very big, and that it will get them a defensive help and offensive help. Now, and the question is that's going on right now is the return for what they're going to. Will it tear apart the chemistry involved in what isn't really kind of a uniquely fused together chemistry situation there? You know, when you have a team that's going like this, that's doing better than anybody thought they could. Do you do this if you can get the right players?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was posed that this morning on Sirius XM, and I think they have to be very careful because a lot of what they could trade is pre-NHL talent, 2 to 3 to 4 years away. Then they have a little bit to trade that's due to the NHL, and then they have even less to trade on the current roster unless you really do want to mess with the chemistry. And that's something where I would be very hesitant to do because I think we would all agree that it's just working for them. You got to be very careful now to not upset that. And I don't know. I wouldn't do it. I would be very hesitant.
I'm kind of with you. I mean, and I felt this way too last year about, you know, I mean, this year they are the Vegas Knights, you know, like
so far they are.
I mean, that's who they are, right? And last year with Vegas, they were when they were going for Erik Karlsson, I was really worried, and I think legitimately so, because I think that if you look at how long it took Karlsson to jump into San Jose situation, can you imagine if he came in at the trade deadline last year and they were trying, that could have really screwed that team up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that when I look at this, I'm kind of with you now. The other thing is, how often do certain kinds of players become available? And then you have to, and if the Islanders thing is just, you know, Lou obviously has a timetable in his head for this team. And if they're way ahead of that timetable and he thinks, and you know, he'll never say it, but if he thinks we're just, you know, outperforming what we should be, but we can really improve our talent level by making this trade, really puts him in a spot, you know.
Well,
it does.
I mean, the thing is, and we talked about this in the last week about the Islanders, that they may be one of those unique teams that will buy and sell at the same time. They're in the position where they've got, and Russ and I have talked about this, where they have two, I'd say, significant UFA forwards in Lee and Brock Nelson. And maybe they sign one of them, but maybe they're not close on the other one. And if you're not close on the other one, and you see an opportunity to go out there and get a player who would be a significant upgrade, who is also a rental, it might be a situation where, you know, a team like Columbus with a guy like Panarin, who clearly, you know, since we had our last full webcast, made it aware through his agent Daniel Milstein that he's not going to sign an extension with Columbus through the end of the year.
Yeah. Which was known all along. It was such an unbelievable.
Right, but I mean, there was talk that there might be a chance, and now there is no chance. And when Jarmo Kekalainen came out yesterday and essentially said, "Well, it leaves us in a tough position." Well, no, it doesn't, Jarmo. If you can't get him signed, and you're a borderline playoff team, or you're in the playoffs, but you don't know what you're going to do, you have to move this guy.
It's a tough spot. This is the one narrative that we've all flip-flopped a million times this year. I now think Bobrovsky is the easiest guy to trade, and I think Panarin's the one you have to wait till the last possible second, because you have to be able to get enough that you feel like you could still advance in the playoffs with the trade that you made, and it helps you for next year. If you don't accomplish those goals, you probably aren't trading them.
But who are the guys on the Islanders, okay? Who are the guys that
– well, like Brock Nelson, but he's not signed. So unless he were to be signed, you're not taking him.
Neither is Eberle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're not going to take a guy like that.
Anders Lee, right, who is obviously – I mean, we're talking about the UFAs now, so there's some UFA. They have a lot of –
Eberle, Lee, and Nelson are the three big UFAs that they have.
Yeah, it would probably have to be a multiplayer deal where one of those UFAs is included, and then it has a future aspect to it, like a first-round pick.
Right, like if you do Eberle, Beauvillier, a first, and a prospect, they probably do it.
Yeah, but what is Columbus getting Eberle for? I mean, unless they really think they're going to sign him.
Just for this run, to sort of plug him in instead of Panarin.
Okay.
Eberle at his best should be a really good playoff player, right? Like that would his history was, if you remember back
But he hasn't been good in 3 years.
I know, but with Team Canada in the juniors, and we're on a long way back. Okay,
no, but you can't talk.
No, he hasn't really been in many playoff situations. I mean, he was with Edmonton all those years. I mean, Everly was a. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ross. Everly was a good player, but when it got to the big games, he was.
He was really known for being a clutch player, but I think that has gone adrift a bit.
Yeah, that's 7-8 years ago. It's like it's ancient history. It's not relevant anymore. But what I see here, if it is Columbus and the Islanders, if you're trading Panarin in a deal where you're getting another rental in say Nelson, because I don't think they want to trade Lee. Then Nelson basically takes Panarin's spot and he helps you in terms of filling the gap. And maybe you're just renting him because you were renting Panarin, or own renting Panarin. But the thing is what you're getting is a first-round pick and a prospect like a Wallstrom or a Del Cole or a Dobson or somebody of that nature to give you some future aspect to that deal. I mean,
they're probably going to want a defenseman, though, and that's the part of the Islanders that I don't know if they can afford to give one up because I don't know if they can replace it.
What is his?
I think Columbus would want a defenseman. I do.
Well, they can give up
clause status. Do we know?
What's that?
Panarin.
As far
Panarin, does Panarin have any say in this at all? Where he goes?
No, he has no protection.
All right, that's really fascinating, right? Because that is, I mean, there's no question that it behooves Panarin to play in the playoffs, right? Like he's going to be a UFA if they trade him to a team like say they traded him to the Rangers or somebody else, who would sign him long term, but might not be a playoff team.
Well, then it wouldn't matter. They have all the money in the world. Like that I don't think there's an issue there.
It's only if Panarin knows like he's going to get signed.
I think if the Rangers were to give up assets for him, which they're not, but if they were, Panarin probably wouldn't go UFA because they probably would give him the best offer that he would get.
Yeah, you're right. Yesterday I wrote about the Panthers getting involved in this too, and I think they're a team to look out for in this whole thing because the Panthers do like to make relatively major plays for things. And
I don't think they could afford to.
And Panarin is, of course, was originally a Hawk who came out. Was he ever connected to Talon, or was he after that?
No, it was Bowman.
They can't afford to lose any assets. They're a team on hanging in the balance as is.
I mean, don't they have some pretty good prospects still that aren't?
Yeah, but I mean, nothing that's that close that you're going to all of a sudden.
The only way that it makes sense for Florida is if they trade an asset that they want to get rid of that they have under a long-term contract, like a Michael Matheson or somebody of that nature, to clear that.
You won't give him
to clear a salary to be able to sign a guy like Panarin. Otherwise, why would you waste what limited assets you have for a rental when you can just sign him on July 1st?
Yeah.
You don't do that. I mean, Dale Talon is not stupid enough to do that. Now, if he's
go
ahead.
I mean, he's not.
Honestly, Owen Tippett's a great prospect. Heponiemi is a great prospect. Dennis Senko is a great prospect. Then you've got some B's, and then Borgstrom's already playing. You're not going to give up Borgstrom in this deal, so you're going to lose one of those three guys, and then you've just weakened your system for a possibility of making the playoffs. Like I couldn't do it.
Yeah, right. No, you have to know it was extended. I mean, it's the same kind of situation, right? You'd have to know that he's extended, and you'd have to know. I mean,
not going to do that though.
What if you can also? The other player in Florida is Bobrovsky, who makes some sense of Florida as well. So, like that's and that as we look down.
Not if Luongo's not in a wheelchair, it doesn't.
Yeah.
At some point, Luongo's moving on, right? I mean, there's like
but I mean, if he still finishes out the season. He's coming back next year. He's probably not retiring.
And what are you going to do with James Reimer and his almost $4 million salary? Are you going to buy it out?
About Luongo, okay. Talking to people down there is, I remember I talked to somebody down there really high up in the team, and right before the season started, and I said, "Listen, I really like where you guys are. I said, I'm picking you guys pretty high. I think that this is a good situation, and this is a player. This is a person who's on that team, okay." And he says to me, he's like, "Well, if Luongo stays healthy."
Okay, we know that.
We all know that, but it's weird that for a team to admit that outright.
Yeah, they know it.
And it's reality.
That when you get to that point where you're admitting that, you're getting to the point where you're frustrated by that if always existing.
Well, that's the whole reason why they signed Reimer in the first place.
Right.
He was going to be a 1B because he'd been a starter in the past,
Right.
who would play 30 to 35 games and lessen the workload on Luongo. There's only one problem. James Reimer is not a 1B anymore. He's a backup, an overpaid backup who when they play, they lose. And Roberto Luongo is 39 years old and he can't carry that team on his back anymore. So I buy the act that they might be interested in Bobrovsky, but you've got to find a way to either make sure that Luongo is on LTIR for the next 3 years remaining on his contract, or you trade or buy out Reimer. Otherwise,
I'm telling you right now, Luongo is not the kind of guy that will do the LTIR thing.
Right.
And if he does retire, it's going to affect the Canucks.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
No, that's all true. I want to get Jan involved in this too, as well, because I want to shift gears a little bit here. But there was one other thought I had and I forgot it, so I'll come back to it.
Let me bring this up with Jan real quick because we don't know how long we have him. Last night, while the Flyers got a really nice win and Anthony Stellaris looked great, the Rangers did something baffling that they should never do again. When I don't care that so much that you dressed 7 defensemen, what I care about is when you shorten the bench and Buchnevich is a player who's not in the lineup, and then you have Cody McLeod too, you basically have shortened yourself by 2 players, and it makes no sense. The game, Chris Kreider was about their only offense, maybe a little Nemestikov. They did get a lot of shots, but there weren't a lot of great ones. Kreider had the best shots.
And Howden was hurt, and Howden got hurt in the first period.
Yeah, Howden got hurt, so that shortened it even more, and it was brutal.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know Rangers Twitter was up in arms over this. There's been a ton of columns written. I know Larry Brooks has written twice in the last 3 days on this one. And it's kind of clear that Quinn is attempting to send a message, and he's attempting to go with I'm assuming the hard love type of strategy associated with it. I mean, it happened with Alain Vigneault the last couple of years where he scratched Buchnevich, and that was a situation where the Rangers were attempting to win. So you can almost argue that, yeah, it makes sense. This is one where they're looking for rebuild. They're looking to grow. I understand sending a message, and it's funny because a couple of weeks ago he had scored the 2 power play goals. There was a lot of talk that he would get moved up from the 4th line to the top 6. He decided not to. It's hard to justify this kind of decision, especially where you're complaining about his 5-on-5 play, but meanwhile he's got Cody McLeod on one side of him and a non-offensive guy as a center, and it's kind of hard for him to generate much offensively 5-on-5. As you said yesterday, them putting Brendan Smith as the additional forward on that line, all of which got chewed up when Howden got hurt because it forced Hayes to move up and had a trickle-down impact. It's a move that I just don't understand what Quinn is aiming for. And I know a lot of people have written that you're ending up in a situation or broaching a situation where they're going to potentially end up giving him up in a deal way too soon, which is going to come back to haunt them. I mean, the comparison that I used years ago was to Alexei Kovalev. I mean, you remember Kovalev was the guy who was always on the tip of every Rangers fan's tongue because he wasn't producing, or the viewpoint he wasn't trying hard enough, or the effort wasn't there. Buchnevich has a ton of offensive talent.
And he's outperforming VC and Zuccarello points per game.
And honestly, Howden honestly hasn't played particularly well either the last 20.
No, he went into a massive slump.
Which is something I've said a lot, but he should have been scratched to give him time to rest, because I think just the wear and tear of the season had got to him based upon coming to where he came from. So, look, my viewpoint is Buchnevich needs to be in the lineup. I think he needs to earn his spot in the top 6, but I could see them definitely placing him on the 3rd line and giving him an opportunity there, and then moving up as the game warrants. But scratching him yesterday, especially with seeing what happened, a 1-0 loss, seeing Howden get hurt, them going with 11 forwards, especially with Zuccarello out, made absolutely no sense at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really do. All right, I want to get into the Muzzin deal for a second, because I wasn't here yesterday to talk about that.
Yep.
Right.
Do we have weird echoes going on?
It's okay now.
Is it okay? I still hear something. That's okay. All right, so the Muzzin trade. Oh man, sorry. I'm gonna mute myself for a second because I hear a weird echo. Sorry, we're back.
Okay.
It's
It's
gone.
better now.
Okay, I was still here.
It's totally cleared up.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so I've gone out of my way. I'm going to tell you something now that we're going to look for it. I'm going to tell you when this happens in the playoffs, Mike. You're going to immediately text me and or send me a cookie basket or something. Okay, because this is the bottom line. This is what Jake Muzzin does. He will at some point draw a bad penalty for the other team. Like he will fake something that'll get a penalty, that'll get a power play for the Leafs. He is really good at that, and I've seen him do this countless times. This is one of his specialties, which shows a lot of intelligence. Honestly, it's a good move. I mean, it's not like something. It makes me crazy because it's not you know.
No, but a guy that could draw penalties is valuable.
Yeah, but he's really good at it, and that's something that's not really being mentioned a lot in this whole thing. There's a Muzzin is really he was a good playoff player, a very good playoff player for the Kings. And one of the reasons, and I still to this day, remember if you recall the big Kings coming from 3 down, 0 against the Sharks series.
Yeah.
There were 2 instances in games where the Kings won to win those 4 in a row that were directly linked to Muzzin doing this.
Okay.
So this is something that I just think it's going to be interesting to see how he's, and it's something that if you're an opponent of his, you have to be aware of, like if you're the Bruins or the Canadians or wherever they play.
Right. Well, I can tell you right now that it sounds like, first of all, and I mentioned this just briefly yesterday, this deal satisfied both the analytics group, Dubas, and Babcock. He played for Babcock at the World Cup of Hockey. He's a big defenseman who uses his body, who's good at breaking the cycle in the defensive zone. So he satisfies Babcock. Dubas knows him from Sault Ste. Marie, and apparently he's one of the better analytics, possession defensemen in the league. Mm-hmm. Now, some people think that that's because he played with Doughty, but I'm just telling you that's.
We'll find out. Yeah, we don't know.
Right, but it sounds like he was somebody that everybody agreed would be an upgrade. Now, the one thing that we know about right now is that he's a left shot defenseman, and he's probably going to play with Morgan Riley. And some people think, I know Dave Poulin said on one of the Toronto radio shows that they may move Riley to the right side, who played the right side before. Early in his career when he played with Phaneuf, and have Muzzin play the left side, which is his natural position. If that's the case, and by the way, Daryl Sutter came out, his old coach, and said, I never played him one shift on the right side. So
never once, yeah.
Came off the farm to say that. Wow.
I know, yeah. He really did. He came out and he was like, he has never played.
Here's the one thing that really annoyed me, though. The one thing that really annoyed me, and it wasn't Mike, but there were so many media members. This time it wasn't Mike. There were so many media members in Toronto that just made it seem like, God, we just stole this trade, didn't we? And apparently, even with Michael Fuda going on the midday show on NHL network, what is it, Hockey Central Radio?
Hockey Central.
Yeah, he knows what he got. He got good value. He got a guy in Sean Dursey that is an overager, and he's not far from the NHL. He got Carl Grumstrom, who might see NHL action this year and definitely will see it next year. Yep. He knows what he got. He knows what he could do with the first-round pick. They might be able to couple those 2 picks and get an even better pick. But yet I saw this narrative like, oh, yeah, this is like a slam dunk steal for the Leafs because they got a name. And just because you're a name today, it doesn't mean in 2 years. The Rangers made a similar trade with Keith Yandel, and it didn't get him anywhere. It's not a guarantee of anything for the Leafs, other than it's what they need now, and you have to see if it works.
Yeah, and I'm, I think you'd admit, Russ, that when I heard this deal, I said, okay, they gave up. I mean, I like Grunstrom a lot. I think he's a third line, second to third line player. I think he's going to be a really good NHL player. So, the Kings got a good return there. The first-round pick will be in the 20s, and Fuda is a very good talent evaluator. And, I don't know about Dursey, but, he's offensively gifted, and he's really improved over the last couple of years. So they got a good return. But I think what the Leafs did, and I think you mentioned this in your blog, is that they set the market rate.
They did.
And by setting the market rate, as well as I do that when the numbers decrease, the price is going to go up. So
they may have killed the trade market actually because the first round draft pick is something that no one wants to trade, right? And the fact is that now if you have to trade a first round draft pick to get a defenseman like this, and not just first round draft pick, but some prospects as well. Mm-hmm. I think the Leafs gave up way too much. And it's funny, Mike, because I really thought,
I thought it cost a lot, and I said
you and I are usually on differing points here where I am all for a team going for it. Okay, I'm all for a team going, and time will tell. Like if Muzzin gets you a couple of those things I'm talking about and manages to make the Kings, like he's the reason they won a Stanley Cup, that because they would not have gotten past the Sharks. If that happens, then they did not give up too much. But, as far as Muzzin's abilities go, I do think he's overrated. I do think he's had a lot of publicity because of where he's played in LA. He's gone on some, long runs there. He's not, I don't see him much different than, I've said this before, than like, than certain players in the league who maybe are like 5th or 6th on some teams.
Do I think his reputation has been enhanced by playing with Drew Doughty? Sure.
Yeah.
Do I think he's overrated? Slightly. Do I think he's Matt Carl? No, because Matt Carl played with Pronger, and everybody thought Matt Carl was the bee's knees. So that
he's not Matt Carl. He's a good defenseman.
You know what I'm saying. You know the example I'm making here.
He wasn't developed very well because the Kings happen to develop defensemen well. They do a really good job with it. Go ask Derek Forbert, who a lot of people made dead and buried and became a very decent defenseman. But here's the other thing. And BK Ups brought up in the chat room about Carolina. Now, Carolina was asking for Kapanen or Janssen simply because they had a younger player with more term to offer. So the Leafs went with the cheaper deal in their eyes because they only got a guy for a 1.5-year rental. Like, that's really what they're looking at.
Well, they were asking for Kapanen or Janssen in a deal for any of their right-hand shot defensemen, which included Justin Falk, who's under the same term as Muzzin. So but
even Justin Falk, you can make the argument you'll get more offense out of him. That.
But that's not what they need, Russ. What they needed is what Muzzin provided. I mean, they already have 3 offensive defensemen in Riley, Gardner, and Dermott. That that you need the guy who will knock somebody in front of the net or slam somebody against the boards. That's why I think Muzzin was a good fit. I mean, the only thing negative about him is that he's a left-hand shot. So
here's one more negative thing, and I'm bringing this up, but then we move on because I know you guys talked about this before. But I don't want to be negative because I am all for teams going for it, not just because I like trades, which I do obviously, but I'm all for teams. Like if they gave up a 1st-round pick for Cam Talbot, I would have been for it. And now you guys would have thought that was ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, yes,
but it's not. But anyway, we won't get into that. But anyway, so we're not going to get to that. Okay. But here's the thing about Muzzin, and I talked to I have a couple really good sources in LA and about Muzzin's game and what it's become lately, what it's been. And he was outstanding when the Kings played that system that they played where they won the Stanley Cup. And that system, because he was very, very good at playing within a system. He's a very, very intelligent player, and that intelligence goes to drawing penalties, all kinds of things. But he's also very good at playing. Okay, this is. The thing about the Kings when they were winning those cups was they were the best team, save like maybe the Devils back when they were winning all their cups, at getting out of their own zone. Just like the ability, quick outlets. There was always somebody on the boards. That person the pass went to, the defender put it to the boards. That player had 2 outlets all the time. Everything was always set. The Kings came out of the zone. You couldn't forecheck them. You had to score off of rushes. It was hard. And Muzzin was a big part of that because he played within that system so well. Martinez did the same thing. Doughty did the same thing. They all knew how, and even other guys they had. Right. The problem is that system has faded because, first of all, Sutter's not there anymore. So Sutter drove that system through like, no one's business. And as they have played more, creatively without a system where they have to make their own plays and do their own things, look for their own outlets, Muzzin has struggled. He's going to a team.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. With a more up-tempo offense here, we're going to see, this is going to tax Muzzin as far as his skating, and we'll see where it's at.
Right.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you say that, Ak, because they interviewed Daryl Evans, who's I think a color commentator for the Kings, on Toronto radio yesterday, and he said that Jake Muzzin has been their best defenseman this year, better than Doughty in terms of how he's played. So if they're falling away from that system, then
time will tell, right?
Right. Let's just say this. Jake Muzzin's probably going to be a top pairing defenseman on the Leafs. He's probably not a top pairing defenseman with most 10 NHL teams, but it's an upgrade on what the Leafs had. And the thing that we also, and this will be good news for us, Ak, the Leafs are not done. They're not done trading. They've got $4 million in cap space. They still have not put Nathan Horton's contract on LTIR, so they actually have around $9 million in cap space. I think they need another depth defenseman, and I think they're looking for a 4th-line center because Freddie Gauthier simply can't cut it. So the Leafs will still be in the mix for some rentals, I would think, or maybe moving a body out and moving a body in salary for salary. But I think
when I saw Muzzin live not that long ago, I thought he still looked good. He could still play the position, but there is going to be an adjustment for sure because now this past year and a half, the Kings have started to quicken up their pace. They just didn't have the players to do it. Now he's going to have to do that all the time with the Leafs, with the pressure. There might be an adjustment period.
Sure, and that's why they make the deal a month before the dedeadline, so he can adjust. No, it's 149. So if you, I
will have to go. I will answer my last question here. That Janet talked about beforehand, which was, do I think Gostisbehere could be moved? And he's definitely hurt now. He's not. He's
no, he got hurt in pregame. Definitely.
Yeah, he's not.
He's hurt. I just meant more in general because he's
right. I mean, definitely. There's no question about that. I think it could be, but not until they figure out Provorov, because the Provorov thing is bigger than people realize. It's not going to be easy, and I can't get into too much about it beyond that. But it's Provorov is not going to be an easy signing, and it's going to be, and as long as that's hanging in the balance, you need one of them,
right?
So if there is a chance that they feel like
they know that they may not be able to get him signed to the long-term deal they want over the summer, they're probably not trading Gostisbehere.
Right, you're not going to move Gostisbehere. If you extended Provorov tomorrow, Gostisbehere would probably be on the market.
So do you think that? Do you think, Russ, that this is sort of like a Trouba situation where he signs a 2-year bridge instead of the long term? And
it's possible. It is possible, and it may be simply because he wants to play better to get more money. To be blunt.
All right,
it's going to be a story we're going to be talking about a ton. So I won't get into the Provorov thing now. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk to you tomorrow, Ak. We had 3 games in the league, and we'll take some questions in the chat to finish off the show. Just one thing, other than Russ, we were talking about the Flyers and how they keep winning, and how that might be a little bit counterproductive when it comes to what they should be doing instead of what they're probably going to do. But now, what are they like? They've won like 5 of their last 6 or something like that, isn't it? Like that kind of win streak for them.
Well, I mean, they're facing everybody's backup goalie. We have to be realistic about that. They are playing better. They have more jump. They have more confidence. We'll see. Like the Boston game will be a really good test for them. But the biggest thing they have to figure out is what they have in Anthony Stolarz. And, we've talked about this. If they play Carter Hart the lion's share of games, they're still not going to know at the end of the season what Stolarz could be for next year, because if they want to go with Hart and Stolarz, that might be okay. But you won't know that unless you play them a lot before the deadline. Because, again, I'm still a big proponent where the Flyers should look at Cam Talbot unless Stolarz has figured it out. If Stolarz has figured out at the age of 25, which is possible now that he's finally healthy, he looks as good as he did 2 years ago. So you have to see, because that could save an awful lot of money in net and could put them as, a big free agent buyer instead in the summer. So I don't know, but to me, that's where they're at. These wins are just, they get a little closer. They still got 5 teams to jump. You can't even worry about that.
Now, Jan, do you think on the opposite side with the Rangers, we know Hayes and Zuccarello are going to be in the mix in terms of trades, and we know the Rangers are going to sell those players. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt, because they may love Hayes and they may want to re-sign him, but why wouldn't you trade him and reap the rewards of getting a couple prospects or draft picks or whatever you can get for him, and then just re-sign him in the summer? But do you think that they are as proactive as, say, Toronto was in moving those guys out as LA was for moving Muzzin out, or do you think they're going to wait till closer to the deadline?
I mean, it should be proactive, I think, especially on the Zuccarello. But again, I think part of it's going to depend on him coming back from the mild foot infection he's gotten, just making sure he's healthy. But I would be proactive on him. I mean, Adam McQuaid has now hit the 25 game mark, so the Rangers have to give Boston a 7th rounder, which was conditional in the trade this summer. So they're going to be very proactive in terms of moving McQuaid. I think Hayes is the one that's probably going to go right down to the deadline, because, look, my view, and I know there's a lot of viewpoints of people not wanting him dealt, partly because of his play, partly because of what they think the future is going to hold with him. And I know, Russ may have a different view. I also do think they will be looking on other guys. I know people have mentioned Chris Kreider. I'm not one of those who wants Kreider moved. I personally think he's going to be the future captain of this team.
Yeah, I don't think
very well.
If they move Kreider, they might as well just scrap the plan they have right now, because it will take them a while to replace a guy like that.
I agree. But I have heard whispers and rumors of him being not available, but people saying that they should be proactive in moving him. And look, I think that's almost anything is on the table right now, but I also think they need to be smart in terms of how they do it. So Zook is one I would be moving immediately. McQuaid is one I would be moving immediately. I think the Hayes one, unless they get blown away by an offer,
Which
I
they
think
could.
it's one, and it could be. I think they're going to play out the market. I think a lot of that may depend on what happens with Duchesne and Stone in terms of their availability, because if Duchesne definitely re-signs in Ottawa, that takes a major piece off the marketplace and ups Hayes' value in terms of the trade.
If you could get a real first for Kevin Hayes, I'm trading it. I don't care. And somebody else, I'm trading it. I don't care if he's coming back or not.
Yeah.
I'll worry about that in July.
And honestly, I can the team that makes the most sense if they and right now they're in a wild card spot. The team that makes the most sense because they have an extra first is Colorado. If they get Colorado's first for Hayes, they've got Ottawa's pick, and it doesn't hurt them.
I can see Winnipeg having interest though in Hayes or Zuccarello.
Sure.
Mike and Russ, I mean, you guys saw. Take a look at the blog I posted with the trade potentials, and you see everyone that came up like that. All the Colorado guys are going, "Oh, you're insane. Hayes is not that good. He hasn't scored X." I'm like, do me a favor, look beyond the numbers and look at some of the other stuff that he does. And
yeah, I mean, he's not playing with the best players either.
Martin Kaut would be too much. Then you're looking in the wrong place.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're not going to trade you Martin Kaut either. But the idea is, when you're looking at these players, like even looking at Kreider, you have to imagine Kreider with like Panarin. You can't imagine Kreider with who he's playing with now, because if you get him with another legit speed guy, which really they don't have in the lineup, that would be something special, because then you've got a power and speed guy with another speed guy. That would be huge. That's something where I would want to see where that can go. Hayes, same thing. I mean, look, for all the ripping I do of him with his hockey IQ, it's not like he's playing with the best players right now either.
Right. Now, just touch on one of the other games, and then we'll take some questions. I watched a lot of the Winnipeg-Boston game, Russ, and this is the thing. From the Toronto's perspective, looking at Boston stayed toe-to-toe with a bigger, tougher team like Winnipeg. It ended up being a 4-3 shootout victory for the Jets. There were a bunch of fights in that game, including Trent Frederick fighting with I don't know if it was Brendan Lemieux or
that was Tanev.
It was Brandon Tanev.
And his parents were watching the fight.
Yeah, it is right, and they missed the high five. But it was his first NHL game, and I was impressed with Frederick. And
well, hold it there, and let's talk about that for a second, because at that draft, there was a lot of bemoaning from the Bruins fans that they felt like they drafted Trent Frederick too early. And I remember talking about it live on Sirius and later on Twitter and other outlets, that this kid is a player. You're not looking at this kid like he's a top line player. You're looking at him like he's a really good all-around hockey player who has size and is smart and can skate and can get you some points. And you saw some of his abilities yesterday. That's why they won't trade him. This is another reason why Boston has coveted him.
But what they're doing right now is a month before the deadline, they're giving him a look and seeing if he can fit in as the third line center, and if he can't, then they go out and trade for one, and if he can, then they maybe trade for a winger. They're looking for forward help, and they've got, like we talked about a few shows ago. You know, they've got assets to move. I just have to say one other thing. I love Jack Edwards. I love his play-by-play. He's very emotional. He's really good.
Yeah.
It's Dmitry Kulikov, not Kulikov, as he calls it, and it's Jack Roslovic, not Roslovic.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: was Forbacka Carlson in the lineup or no?
No, he got sent down to Providence.
He did, right? Yeah, I have a feeling he was overhyped. I do. I don't know if they're ever going to find the right role for him.
Maybe it was because his initials were JFK. Okay, let's go to the chat for some questions. Jan, if you as soon as you have to drop off, go ahead. But we've got a couple minutes here.
First question was if we'd have a show today. Clearly, we answered that.
Yeah,
the answer.
Unless this is a mirage. Yeah. Mike from Buffalo. Is there snow in Buffalo? Yes, there is.
All right. Vepsis is asking if and when Panarin gets moved, would Zuccarello make sense for Columbus to go after to make up for the loss of Panarin would leave out of the lineup? I don't think so, Vepsis. What do you think, Jam?
I mean, Zuccarello is I wouldn't say poor substitution, but he's definitely not the same kind. I mean, his game has regressed a little bit. mean, he'd still be playing with talented offensive guys there. I mean, I could see them going after him in free agency maybe if they can get him on a cheap deal. Wouldn't be a bad replacement. That might be the move they may go, because we talked about it, Russ. I don't think the Rangers are going to go after Panarin now and give up assets to get him, because it doesn't make sense given the position they're at, unless they're so desperate and so concerned that somebody else is going to sign him in free agency and they figure getting him in now and maybe signing him early is the route to go. I just don't foresee them going that way.
It makes sense for the Islanders because they're in it. It makes sense for teams like, I mean, if Tampa could somehow fit his salary under their cap, move out somebody. It doesn't make sense for the Rangers. The Rangers are going to sit there and wait until July 1st and get him for nothing. You don't waste assets to get a rental.
All right, here's a good question.
They're going to potentially get him for nothing. I mean, nothing is
potentially.
Despite all the rumors, it's not a done deal.
No, of course not.
All right. Here's a good question from Jonas. Since DeHaan isn't working out in Carolina, would they be interested in a Gardner for Hamilton swap with the Leafs adding in a forward like Janssen? I don't think so.
Nope.
And right now, DeHaan, I think, will eventually work out. I just think a lot of things in Carolina aren't working out. And to be honest, we've got to see what Rod Brind'Amour is first before you start trading players that you just signed. Like, it's going to take Brind'Amour a while to figure out what he is as a coach.
I mean, I look at the Leaf situation when it comes to Gardner, and like, you add Muzzin, so you improve your top four. If you trade Gardner in any scenario, whether it's trading him for, I mean, remember, he's a rental. So if you trade him to another competing team, like say Western Conference team that's competing for a playoff spot, you're probably going to get the rental package of a first and a prospect. If you can flip that to another team for another defenseman, then you might do it. But the Leafs aren't going to create an upheaval by trading a guy who's been with them since, I think, 2011 and is very popular in the room. I think Leaf fans have to face it. He's an own rental. They're not going to move him. Even if they're going to go out and trade for like a top pairing guy like a Pietrangelo, if he becomes available, the guys that are going to go in that deal are guys named Kapanen or Nylander or Liljegren. It's not going to be Gardner. Gardner is going to be there for the rest of this year, and then he probably leaves via free agency.
Anthony asks a good question, something I also answered this morning. If the Flyers go on a series run, does that change Fletcher's plans at all? No, because I think if you look at the core that they've had in place for a while, they've had these streaks where they win a lot and they lose a lot. Right. And in the end, it doesn't do them any good. I don't know if they can really move a core piece at the deadline now because we talked about Gostisbehere's injury and Voracek's contract. But Voracek could possibly get traded at the draft or in the summer. And I could see that happening to break up the core because clearly this, you're not going to trade Claude Giroux, but clearly the core has to be changed. Otherwise, you might keep getting these similar results.
And you're not going to trade Couturier because he's a great value and he's a really good player. Now,
he's one of their best players.
I don't. Sorry, if I'm Chuck Fletcher, I don't care if I win 12 games in a row. I'm trading Wayne Simmons.
Yeah, he's getting traded. I mean, and he is one of the core. So obviously he's getting traded. But I think they might have to break it up more than that. We all know that Simmons is going. So I don't even count him as the core anymore. Maybe I should. I don't know. Okay. Steve James says, I bet Mike would be a bruising right-handed shot D-man. I don't know. Mike would know that. I don't know.
I am a right-hand shot. I don't know about bruising. I'm a shot blocker.
Mava, who earlier did the old test on the chat room, I laughed at that, said Adam McQuaid to the Leafs for a third-round pick. I would do that tomorrow. Mike would throw up his lunch, but I hope they do it.
No, I don't think the Leafs would do it. I really don't, because I and maybe I'm wrong here. I always have doubts about players who are going to face one of their old teams. And we know that the Leafs are probably going to play the Bruins. McQuaid toughing it up against his former team, I think it would be a tough task for him to do. Honestly, I right now, and Leaf fans will throw up at this prospect, but I think it's a more reasonable and more acceptable option. I could see them trading a 4th or 5th round pick to Dallas to reacquire Roman Polak.
Yeah, I do too. Michael says Panarin to Nashville for Fiala, Fabro, and a conditional second based on re-signing. They're not going to throw Fabro in a deal for someone that might be a rental. There's no way.
I think you have a better chance at like a Tolvanen than a Fiala.
Yeah. Tolvanen, they would dangle out there more than Well, I'm not saying Fiala. You think Fabro would be in that deal? I don't.
No. I'm saying Tolvanen instead of Fiala, and maybe a first instead of a second. But I don't think they're going to give up. They're not giving up Fabro. Fabro is probably they have to keep Fabro for one reason. If they can't re-sign Yossi, then they need somebody to step in. That when a lot of speculation is, well, they may trade Subban to create the room for Yossi, but then you need somebody to replace Subban.
But Subban's got a TV show now. All right. Anyhow, let's see. Drew wants to know, is Reimer even a backup anymore? It does say that on his contract.
He's a backup, but Florida would have to eat half of his salary to move
they can't
him,
do that.
And they can't do that.
Mava is asking if McAvoy's in play. He'll never be in play.
No.
Jeremy's asking, does Brock Nelson play center? Yes, he does.
Yeah, I had somebody yelling and screaming at me that I had to block on Twitter because it says, I can't listen to anybody who says that Anders Lee is a center. Look at every listing. It has him listed as a center. I don't care if he hasn't played it. He's listed as a center.
And I've seen Nelson play center. Let's see. It says here Muzzin has a good first pass. I did mention that on the show yesterday. Yeah. If you were watching Veps, this is not shame on you.
All 12 minutes.
All 12 minutes. Hey, it was good content, man. That's all I could say. Don't go for the length of. Well, never mind. Let's see.
2 more and we're done.
I know. So what Drew wants to know, what's the price of a defenseman? What could Philly get for Simmons? If that was the price for a defenseman. I still think they're looking for a conditional first and a roster player or prospect that's there that can play in the NHL now but hasn't because he's been blocked by the team just being too good. I think that's what they're looking for.
Even though Muzzin's a defenseman and we're talking like Furland and Simmons who are power forwards, I do think what the Leafs gave up, and I don't think the Leafs gave up too much. I think that was the market rate for a top 4 defenseman, but I think that affects what Carolina and Philadelphia will ask for Furland and Simmons. I think that the Flyers will ask for a first and a prospect and maybe 2 prospects. And the same thing for Furland. Now, do I think that I think Simmons is as good at forward as Muzzin is on defense. Furland doesn't have as long of a resume, but I think that's what Carolina and what Philadelphia are going to get. They're going to get 1, maybe a conditional 1, but a 1 and a prospect, at least 1 prospect.
All right, there's like 3 more real good ones.
Okay.
Sherwood Park Sports Talk wants to know, he goes, I know you may not follow the WHL, but what are your thoughts on Kootenay Ice moving to Winnipeg? I think it's great. Actually, from what I hear, it'll really help travel. I know Winnipeg's been looking to get a team for a while. I think it's terrific. I don't go to dub games. I do watch some. And so I think this is a really good thing, actually a very big deal for the league. I do. I think that'll really help things. Jason says,
they're probably going to play a lot of games against like Brandon and Moose Jaw, and you're like,
but it makes travel easier.
Right.
Wayne Simmons to Toronto for Bracco and Marchment. I don't think the Leafs would do that.
Nope. I will say right now, Jeremy I thought that Bracco would probably be part of any deal for a defenseman. He has turned it on so much offensively and I think the last month, not only passing, but now scoring goals. He's up to 12 goals. He's leading the Marlies with 43 points. I think they recognize. I had a brief discussion with somebody in Leaf management at training camp who was not completely aware, because he had just joined Leaf management, was not completely aware of how good Bracco was, and then he saw Bracco in some training camp games and was like, "Whoa." And I think they recognize this guy has got a lot of talent, and it's finally coming to the forefront at the AHL level. And if you look at his resume, he's won a World Junior, he's won a Memorial Cup, and he's won a Calder Cup. And he's on his entry-level contract. If they have to move somebody for cap reasons, Nylander, then Bracco would be the guy to step in, and it would be a very inexpensive replacement. And I'm not saying he's going to score as much as William Nylander, but I think he could pick up a significant amount of slack. So I don't think they're moving Bracco.
Last question. Thomas had a good one. He goes, who breaks in first, Mitchell Stevens or Taylor Reddish? I think it's Mitchell Stevens because of a couple of different reasons. I think trades may open up a center spot first. I think that's something where that's going to eventually happen. And then Radish, the same as Adam Ernie, you want it to be the right time because he's a bigger guy. And so this is his first year in the AHL. I would rather him start in the AHL next year. If he rips it up then, because he's doing well, he has 27 points. He rips it up then, fine. But if not, hold off.
Although, I mean, if they trade Tyler Johnson in the offseason, then they're one
center of the spot that could open up.
Yeah, but their 1, 2, 3 would be. I mean, if they keep playing Stamkos at center, or if they play Stamkos at center, it's Stamkos, Point, and Cirelli. Do you want Mitchell Stevens being your fourth line center?
No, but Cirelli can do it. Cirelli's more that guy.
Yeah.
So I still think it's okay to do.
It's a nice problem to have, and depending on what they do to open up salary, if they trade a Killorn or Palat, that increases the possibility of Radish being a guy that gets brought up from Syracuse. If not, if they trade Johnson and his $5 million salary, then it increases the possibility of Stevens.
I just got a snow squall warning. I don't know what that is, but we're not even supposed to have snow here today.
Wow.
Maybe it's for northern Jersey and it just does all of New Jersey. I don't know.
Okay.
Is Maroon 5 available? Well, clearly, no, it's Maroon available. If Maroon 5 were available, I would trade it. I was just letting you know that now.
Yeah. Trade it by halftime of the Super Bowl.
Before then.
Yes, before then, please. Silence them. Okay, good show. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Eklund, for Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.